Well, welcome everybody. I asked earlier, but I don't know if anybody new walked in. I know a couple people went to the seminar downstairs. Did anybody else that I missed? Okay. So I'm not a true interior designer. I am a designer, but not an interior designer. I don't have the ASID behind me. But so I always wonder if I actually am on like a get these trends or if I just make them up as I go along. But actually, they're very similar. So I'm actually like, whoo, I got this. So yeah, so I'm going to kind of go through what it takes to put together a kitchen. Now, we do this every day. We do full remodeling. I own a company called Neighborhood Building and Remodeling. We've been in business for 36 years this year, long time. We've got a full staff in our office, so we're not just a small company. We've been around for a long time. We're in Minnetonka. And we do, like I said, everything from basic maintenance to huge additions. But kitchen is actually one of my favorites because it seems like the biggest transformation and changes people's lives, literally, when we redo them. So I'll go through them. I'm going to throw out the trends that I think are current. You have to enjoy them. I mean, if this trend doesn't speak to you, don't do it. You know. But if you're looking for something that maybe is just a little more edgy or a little bit something and you really do like it, then it's worth at least giving it a shot sometimes. So I break it down into each piece. So we'll talk a little bit about layout. Layout is kind of a whole spectrum. So when I go to someone's house and they are considering a full remodel, where we're really maybe taking down walls, maybe moving appliances around. So when you're in your own kitchen, don't be so stuck on where those appliances are. The new code has changed our electrical so dramatically that you're going to be running new electric anyway, that you may as well move the refrigerator. Don't be locked into where it is. You're going to be moving the stovetop. All the code has changed, so you've got to do new electrical anyway. The sink is the only one that gets a little bit tricky. It's an easy transition to maybe make it to an island. That's not a hard transition. But obviously, a lot of times there's a window right there, so what do you do with the window? You know, that can open up a can of worms. So if you can keep maybe the sink, that'll simplify it a little bit. But the rest of the appliances, feel free to move them. So when you're doing the layout. I'll talk about the trends, and then I'll give you some examples at the end. And they are true. They are our remodels. I didn't take pictures off the internet, so these are, for the most part. The one thing I am not is a photographer. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So any idea what this, so the National Association of Realtors does a big spread, and they figure out what the national average for our area, which includes Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and what the average kitchen remodel these days. This is mid-range. This isn't the top of the line, and it's not the bottom. It's right in the middle. Any ideas? Including appliances, because that is a biggie. 60,000. Great answer. Yeah. Yep. So the average right now is $66,000, almost $67,000 on average. Now, it doesn't take much to get to that number in a kitchen remodel, depending on what you do. But I will say not everybody spends that much money. You don't need to. There's some options, there's some pluses, some minuses, and you can kind of get it to work. So you don't have to spend that much, but there are many people that do. So the other thing is people ask me, where do I start? So I kind of think, you know, you should open your mind to moving out, taking down walls. Is there any walls that can be done? Is there any place we can gain space? That'll help you kind of see if there's any place that you can expand. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. I get that. But the first thing that I tell people to do is actually start shopping for appliances. It's a big number in that the whole spectrum of a budget. Appliances are a big part of it. There's room up here. I know you don't want to probably be right in the front, but appliances. And we used to just have standards. You know, the refrigerator was always this one size. Microwaves were always one size. They're not anymore. They are, with the exception of maybe the dishwasher, every appliance is different. But now dishwashers are requiring different plumbing and different electrical. So not having the appliance ahead of time can throw it into a wrench. If all of a sudden you throw a dishwasher at a plumber later, you're going to have additional charges because they would have plumbed differently knowing what you had. So I always say start shopping because that's going to be the big one. So what is a trend? Colored appliances are a big deal. Lady downstairs did mention them, and I had to laugh, you know, and giggle. You know, it's a big ticket item to get the color on them, but if it is something that you love, I say go for it. The red stove was actually breathtaking when it went in. And that was probably 10 years ago that she did that. So, and more appliance manufacturers are getting color in them, where we just had like Wolf and a couple others Viking, that would actually do color. Now more manufacturers are doing color, so you can kind of keep that price point down a little bit more. So that's kind of nice. But the other one I always do like, you know, we've been stuck on the stainless, and stainless for the most part is a pretty, you know, it's a neutral color. So just because you do stainless steel appliances, you don't need a stainless steel faucet. I mean, just take the stainless out of the equation in your color scheme. But if you can do built-ins, this one actually is an expensive one. These are actually the true built-in ones that you see. And so this refrigerator is about $5,000, which, again, not everybody wants to spend that. But this is actually just a Gen Air, and it just has cabinet panels on it. So if has anybody been appliance shopping lately? There's a new black stainless that's out. It's kind of trying to offset the stainless that we've been doing for so long. I just had the client pick a black stainless side by side, so that was his request, that they all go all the way side by side. So we didn't have a ton of options, but that refrigerator was $2,700. That refrigerator is $2,800, counter depth. So the only additional cost beyond that is going to be the panels themselves, but it's completely built in. And it's a nice look. The only reason I tried to talk him into that is he didn't like the bottom freezer and the top, but, you know. The other thing to consider when appliances, beyond this, the other ones that you can put panels on would be like a dishwasher, kind of makes it disappear. The place that if they're kind of set off and you're not staring right at the appliances, you know, having them be stainless steel or something else is great. But if they're the center focal point of your kitchen, when you know walk in, the first thing you're going to see is a huge refrigerator. This is a nice option. So just when you're thinking about the whole thing. Hood vents have kind of become a little bit of a tricky scenario. They are not required by code. With all our crazy code that we have, I don't understand why they're not, but they are not. They don't have to vent. You don't have to have them, but most people do want them. For a while, again, not picking on Viking or any of those other ones, but they came up with hood vents that were very high powered. They were sucking, they say, it's called a CFM, a cubic feet per minute. And they were sucking at 500 to 600 cubic feet per minute. So in a normal house, it was like a balloon just shrinking backwards because it was pulling so hard. So if we had cold air on the outside coming into our wall cavities, that's where we were getting mold. So you had that big mold scare probably, again, 10 years ago, I suppose. Most of the cities agreed that they would not allow anything over 300 CFM in the state of Minnesota. And they have held to that tightly. You can get away with maybe like a 320, but in the same sense, all the manufacturers have now adjusted to the 300. So just you got to watch it because every once in a while you'll get caught in one that doesn't have that. You know, it just is sucking too much space. But so you have a hood vent that is an option, but you have other options. A microwave. If it's a small kitchen, this is a great option. The microwave over the stove works great. You can do convection. You can almost make it a second oven. Again, why I have people do appliances first is because that microwave is a billion different sizes. And what I don't want is I'm going to pick on Home Depot even though they're here, any of the box stores, they'll pick these cabinets and they'll try to line the microwave up with the bottom of these cabinets and just use a stock size above it. The problem is that gives you only 18 inches. And even a stock pot is almost 14. How do you you can't even cook on it. So ideally, from the bottom from here to here, you want to be between 24 to 30. 30 would be the high. 24 is usually where I kind of end up. 24, 25. You need more space in there, and they just don't give it to you if you're not thinking about it ahead of time. Otherwise, it's just too close. And again, some are big and super tall, and some are real skinny, and it's a whole different can of worms. There's always the freestanding, just where the hood vent is. It's got the lights in it. Great look if you can do that. This one's what they call actually an insert. So you build something, a cabinet or a wall or whatever you want to do, and this piece just inserts right up into it. So you don't ever see the actual hood vent. A great look and not that expensive. Obviously, you've got the cabinetry, which may cost you a little bit more, but the actual vent itself is maybe 50 bucks more. It's not a huge number. You'd think having it be so custom is a little bit more, but the appliance itself versus a regular freestanding one, they're the same price. And I love this little niche right behind the stovetop. And we bought a house a few years ago, and it had just the plain Jane, and I took a sledgehammer because I wanted that so bad. I had 2 heat runs for serving the upstairs right there, so needed a new backsplash at that point. So my husband's like, oh boy. So, but I just think that's a great idea. If you've got that space behind there, why not use it? It's a great spot. Again, it's kind of utilizing every little inch that you have in these small kitchens. All right, so moving on to cabinetry. This would be the next step, is to kind of, appliances we've got, now we can set our cabinets into play. There's a bunch of options. You can do box cabinets from the local hardware store or lumberyard or wherever you want to do. They need to be installed, and they come as individual pieces typically. Usually any like rollouts or anything that's inside, some manufacturers will have them pre-installed, some will not, and you got to do them later. So there's just some time commitment to that. I've even actually recently, I haven't installed them yet, so I don't know if I'm opening myself up to a can of worms. There's one called Click. I don't know if anybody's on Facebook. It shows up like I think every 10 seconds on there. And we just ordered it, a bunch of cabinets from there, and we haven't installed it. I'm curious to see if it makes it any easier, because they are significantly less and more custom than if I went down to a lumberyard. So we'll see how that goes. I've also done IKEA. We did IKEA mainly for the door style. It was a wrapped, shiny white, and we couldn't, even a cabinet maker couldn't make it. They bake it on. So IKEA had the door that we needed, so we had to do IKEA. And they have some fun ideas, but it was a lot of trips to IKEA. And when it was all said and done, obviously we couldn't duplicate the door, but the actual cabinetry would have been cheaper if we had done custom by the time we got it all put together, because it's so many little pieces. So color. We've done a million white cabinets in this world. White has been kind of on the, forefront of what we see on Pinterest or whatever. If anybody does Pinterest or House, those are always on there. But people are starting to go a little warmer. We did that white gray for so long that it became a little bit stark. And no offense if anybody has the white and gray, because I still do like it. But it is the trend, if you want to trend it, is getting warmer. So instead of having bright whites, they're much softer whites, almost cream colors is becoming a little bit more popular if you stay to the white side. But don't be afraid to do other colors. And although we don't do a ton of them in kitchens, I see in like bathroom cabinetry where normally people would put a white cabinet, we're going to like a light gray or a light tan, or if you're familiar with the color Revere Pewter, they call it the new greige. It's right between gray and tan, and like beige. Revere Pewter is by Benjamin Moore. So don't be afraid to kind of change the colors. I mean, you are painting cabinets, and they aren't going to last. The paint is going to have some issues. So if in 10 years you need to repaint them, that's an easy thing to do. It's not the end of the world. But stained cabinets are, we do almost about half and half. So these happen to be all real dark stains, and we have a tendency to be going to the lighter side. But of course, those are the ones that I hand out to everybody, and then I don't have them. But wood species. I get this question all the time, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because it is kind of a big one. But cherry was popular for a long time, probably again 12 years ago. It has a tendency to red, but it takes stain beautifully. So if you like kind of that color where it's got a little bit of red and brown, cherry is a great option. And price point, it's not typically more than a lot of the other ones. Oak is still out there. We're doing white oak, not the red oak. Probably what we see if you've got a wood floors, those are red oak. White oak is a little clearer. And then what we do is don't put like a yellow poly on them. We put like a water-based, it's half and half, but it doesn't yellow in time. Like, if the golden oak, you've seen it, it kind of yellows in time. But the wood that we probably do the most, only because it does take stain, is alder. These are all alder. It takes stain beautifully. It doesn't turn, red like cherry would. It's a little softer wood, so you got to be a little bit careful. It would be similar to cherry, actually. But maple is an option if you keep it light. It just, when you stain maple, it gets a little stainy, it gets a little blotchy, you know, with the darker colors. But alder is a very popular wood out there. Now, we do 90% custom cabinets. By the time we pay for the cabinets, we pay for the install, possibly pay for shipping, and then we have somebody install them, we are probably within 10% of a truly custom, fully installed cabinetry setup. So you got to weigh that a little bit. I mean, don't be afraid to have a bid done by custom cabinetry, just because it says custom. A lot of manufacturers will even make a semi-custom, which just means that it comes in sections, not a full wall. It just is a little, it'll have a couple extra seams, but don't be afraid to have it bid by any means. It's not as much as we think it's going to be. All right, so again, when I sit down with somebody and I'm in their kitchen, I even like to, if they'll allow me to, open up some doors and some drawers. I want to see what's in there, because one person could, and I will show you a picture when we get later, have like utensils that take up 4 drawers, but a kitchen I was just at recently, I opened up 1, 2, 3 full cabinet doors packed full with dishes. I mean, there's no way somebody can use dishes from 3 different, cabinets. I'm like, okay, we need to get these out of here so that you can get usable space in this kitchen. So, but I want to take an inventory, literally. Garbage, if you can build it in, it's a great idea. You got the front is garbage, the back is recycling. We used to have to separate, so we used to do 4. We don't have to do that anymore, obviously. This is a pots and pans drawer. This guy happened to put spices there. Most people put the lids there. It's designed to have the lids up here and then all your pots. You could do this. You can do double rollouts. We also do drawers that would hold pots and pans. So it's kind of figuring it out. The corner drawers are very popular. The one thing that I do like about custom, and this is where you can utilize it, we had 14 inches to the stove on this side, but we only had 9 here. And they were able to make a drawer, which you'll never be able to buy anything like that. And so we're able to not waste 1 inch of that space. The pullouts, that's actually an 11-inch pullout, but you can get as small as a 9-inch that pulls out that you can utilize. You can hang pots and pans up there, you can have spices down below, and you can do the pullouts, which are really nice. Because otherwise, 9 inches, the only thing that it fits is like cookie sheets and cutting boards, as a bottom or an upper. Even an upper becomes a little bit tough. You got to incorporate it some other way. A couple more that we've done. If you're gaining space and you're taking out a little linen closet, some of these older homes, especially in Minneapolis, here we lost there was a little closet right here. So to make it up, we just made the kitchen feel bigger by incorporating that closet into here. And a lot of times, this one doesn't have it. But if they're small like this, I'll even put electrical in there because we've got all those electrical little brooms now. Otherwise, you got to charge it someplace else. So if you can get the electrical right in there. There's a pull-out pantry again. If you've got a weird space, a wine rack's not a bad option. This is a 9-inch. I mean, that's a ton of storage right there in 9 inches. The other really popular thing is the double. If we are short on drawers, maybe it's a kitchen that I can only get 6 drawers in. You can double them up, stack them right in there. The drawer, again, the beauty of custom, it does get a little bit deeper, but nobody would ever know the difference. And you can get twice as much storage in them. Yeah?
Right by the refrigerator, is there a problem, like if you were to keep spices there, with the heat from the refrigerator?
So good question. Is there a problem with keeping spices next to the refrigerator, with the heat kind of transferring? I feel, I guess nobody's ever asked me that question, so it's a good one. My guess is I feel like the new refrigerators don't put off as much heat as the old ones did. I think they're a little more efficient. I'm just trying to think of my own and how much heat, and it doesn't put off much heat. But yeah, isn't that great? I mean, you can't get anything else. Here, this one actually is only a 12-inch drawer. Again, when you got weird spaces, we got to utilize every single inch. Remember the utensil lady I told you? That's hers. That was in 4 drawers. And she pared them down, which is kind of crazy. And then here we had a weird corner. We want to utilize it. We just made it into like a media. There's charging, lots of outlets in here. This was actually for each kid, you know, kind of down the line. But again, weird spot. We couldn't get a pantry. It wasn't wide enough and it wasn't deep enough. So we worked with what we got. All right, so countertops. You know what? This is one that people ask me about all the time. And of course, I always feel like that information is out there. Ooh, blinded. So quartz, quartz and granite are probably the two top ones, hands down. Has anybody ever shopped for quartz for a different project? Okay, it really is one thing that throws a lot of, at least my clients, like it makes them overwhelmed. So there's different parts of quartz. So when you're, of granite. So when you go to buy, let's say you know you want to do granite for your kitchen. You actually need to go to a granite distributor, and they have those huge slabs, and it's one right after another. And it can be a little overwhelming. So we kind of walk through and pick 6. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And you write down the numbers, and we go back through them, and you usually will get down to 3 that you actually like. Now, there's many distributors. That's part of the problem. We've got them in Minneapolis. We've got some in Maple Grove. We've got some in Edina. I don't know if there's any in Bloomington that I can think of. So you're more than welcome to go visit any of them. But then what happens is you pick the slab that you like, that you love, and that goes to a fabricator. So there's a 2-step process, which it can be, you know, kind of confusing. That goes to a fabricator, and then the fabricator actually fabricates. We buy the whole slab, that gets sent to the fabricator, and the fabricator makes it. So it's kind of a 2-step piece. But it does work. I mean, it'll seem a little overwhelming, but just write them all down and then go back through, and it will narrow down. I like granite. If I was doing a kitchen today, I would do granite. I think granite, and again, this is my personal style, tells a story. It's a natural product. Each piece is a piece of art, in my opinion. One can be very simple. One can have huge lines. I just like that it tells a story, I guess, and that's just me. But a lot of people like quartz because it's a little bit lower maintenance. To seal granite, you just need to spray on a material, let it sit, it kind of gets milky white, and you wipe it off. That's it. It takes 10 minutes. So it's not crazy, like you got to do something crazy. But these are both quartz materials. Quartz comes in many different name brands. Caesar stone, Sile stone, Formica makes one, Hanstone makes one, and different fabricators, going back to the fabricators, distribute different quartz products. So depending on who you end up using. If I have somebody that wants maybe a concrete look or straight up plain white, quartz is the only option really if you want a solid material, because that's what they became popular on, was the solid stuff. But this is a Cambria piece, and Cambria is going to be the most expensive quartz on the market. I hope there's nobody from Cambria here because I'm kind of dissing them. But the one thing that Cambria has that nobody else has is their patterns are very unique, and nobody else, I feel, has been able to duplicate how gorgeous they are. If you've ever been to a Cambria showroom, it is phenomenal. But this is going to be a lot more expensive. By the time I get this installed, I'm probably at about $160, $170 a square foot, whereas this one's about $95. So there is a big difference between those. And granite will run you somewhere between $80 to $110, depending on what. They're all different prices depending on how rare they are. So although we do a lot of Cambria, it's mainly because of the pattern can't be duplicated. At least I don't think that anybody else has come close. But if your budget doesn't call for it, the laminates that are out in this world are great. From a distance, I think people would have a hard time telling the difference. So don't take this out of the equation. If push comes to shove, you can always replace countertops. If I put money into the cabinets, because this can be changed, and not that, in 5-6 years. So don't give up on laminate quite yet. I do want to show you a trend. This is actually a piece of granite. It's a black granite. Black typically is in a lower price range because it's readily available, in multiple different countries. But this is how granite typically is. It's real shiny. It's got, if you can see it, it's real shiny on top. This, they call it honing. And any of the solid surface, whether it's quartz, granite, Cambria, they all can be honed where you take the shine off. And it's actually a very pretty look. I always like a little shine in a kitchen, but you know, if you've got too much going on, it becomes, you know, this is a good option. And this costs about $1, give or take, a square foot to do. So most kitchens are right around 45 square feet, so it's not a huge upgrade. So know that that's out there. And it is becoming more popular because it just makes the granites look a little bit different. So any questions on tops? Because that is one that actually throws people off a lot. And you may be just doing tops and not doing cabinetry. So,
do you ever combine like two different looks of the tops?
So you asked if we ever combine two different looks of materials, more or less? Yes, I will sometimes just do the perimeter in a solid quartz material. And if it's a good size island, we'll find a piece of granite that maybe is a remnant where we're not having to buy the whole slab, and just use a remnant and make the island kind of that cool, you know, natural thing. Yeah, so mixing them, don't be afraid to do it. Yeah, it's not hard to do. Or even vice versa. Find the granite on the outside and do a solid on the island. Granite typically looks better if it's a bigger piece because you can see the pattern. But that's not, you know. All right, I'm hitting countertops. The one I didn't even touch on, this is actually soapstone. Is anybody familiar with it? This happened to be a chef, or you know, they own a food truck. Maybe that's a better answer. And they really wanted something they can cut on. Soapstone you can cut on. It does run about $130 a square foot, give or take. It's a green color, a green-black color in texture. But when you cut on it, you do make a mark. You can sand it out. So again, it's a natural product, and it's fun. It's very, you know, something that you really want to have. But it's out there. This client down in the corner, just to kind of show you how, really wanted marble. And marble comes with its own little challenges. It does have a tendency, they call it etching. So if you get lemon juice on it, it will take that shine off of it. So if you look at it, it will look kind of dirty. You can hone it, which does help that problem because then it keeps it more looking all of it dull. But it still can have some etching and it can have some staining because it's such a porous material. So we don't do a lot of it. I mean, most even fabricators will say don't do it. Find something else that's close. So we found this granite, and it's a little busier than a truly marble, but it really turned out pretty in there. Again, my photography is not good, I told you that. So, but it is there. Any questions yet? So if you can kind of see the pieces to the puzzle kind of coming together. Start with appliances. If you're keeping your appliances, move on to the next thing. If you're going to do cabinetry, you've got a bunch of options. You know, figure out what you kind of like and what you don't. And then you kind of move on to countertops. And as a builder, I want to know every single one of those pieces to that puzzle because they all affect one to the next. The way I order something could be different based on what you choose. And how I lay out something. So there's been times where somebody has said, oh, by the way, and I went, and I'm backtracking to try to make it work. And no offense, you know, you just don't know how many things it affects, and it's kind of a trickle-down effect.
Yeah. As far as like sustainable or like green products, do you have a recommendation for any of those that you like to work with?
Yes, thanks for asking. He's asking if there's any green products out there, and there is. There's actually, it used to be only one name brand, and of course I'm going to forget it right now. But there are many more now. We've got a paper product that has now come out. It's a recycled paper. And then also there's always been the glass one. That's been around for a long time. It's like concrete and glass kind of combined is kind of how it's actually quartz and glass. And it is a green product. So when you're building a green, like a green kitchen, that's a great product. We don't do a ton of it because the price point, unless you are so set on it, which I just did run into somebody that was, unless you're so set on it, most people aren't willing to pay for it because it starts at about $135, I would say, is where the starting point is, and then goes up from there. So most people won't spend, and I don't know anything about the paper. I don't know how long it will last, you know. I think of Trex. Has anybody put in Trex before? And I'm going to pick on them too, because they're on my list. Trex came out with their product. It was supposed to be maintenance-free. It was made with paper, and it broke down, and they didn't warranty it. So we replaced a lot of decks out of my pocket. but their product broke down. They've changed their formula, moved on, but the original product, so I would be always worried about any new products out there. All right, backsplashes. This is actually probably one of my favorites. You're not married to it for the rest of your life. Backsplashes can be changed. They're kind of like countertops, not the end of the world by any means. We've got some fabulous tile stores out there that have umpteen options, you know, just amazing to me. So the only thing is, again, I always say, let's try to figure out what you're going to do. So I'm going to give you an example. This was out of my office, but this wasn't my project. Tiniest kitchen I've ever seen truly the tiniest kitchen I've ever seen. But this was the top, this was the backsplash. So the homeowner after the fact came and said he wanted the natural stone, which it's very varied, like a stacked stone. And it looks great, but had we known that, we would have taken all of these and put them up into this cabinet. Because now they just sit kind of kittywampus, which again would make me a little crazy. So, but if we can do that, we would have either moved these switches or shoved everything up, made that cabinet adjust, something to accommodate for that. So that's, again, why knowing everything is always nice. Texture is huge right now. If I had to say what backsplash is, texture, or pattern is huge. If everything else is simple and you've done solid quartz, some of the new patterned, I don't know if you've seen them, I almost feel like it's bringing me back to maybe like the 60s, like the patterned tiles, and they're gorgeous. And again, you're not married to them forever. It's just tile. Change up the pattern. This happens to be glass. These were metal tiles. We couldn't get them all lined up because we needed to avoid the outlets, so we did a random pattern. There's 3 in between. There's 3 glass lines. They were all random. This is solid granite on the backsplash back in here. It's a pretty look, but you're paying for it. It's not going to be free. If you have the room, with a bigger cooktop or something, you've got room to do something there. If you don't, it looks like a lot of tile if it doesn't have a pattern or something to it. So if you want to do something, that's the spot to do it, would be right over that stove, because your hood vent is, again, 24 to 30 inches high. You're at least 30 with a regular stove, if not 36. So there's a big gap right there that can be utilized. Here's a couple others. The one on the right, that's from, I think, Home Depot. It's a glass tile, pretty basic. I think it was probably $12 a square foot, and it looks great. It was real basic. The stripes, although we did this a long time ago, I still keep it in here because these tiles were bigger, and I liked the bigger tiles. You've seen Subway, and we've done Subway a lot. So even if you're in love with the Subway, instead of just doing the 3x5s, think about doing a bigger tile and maybe still doing the Subway set, which means that they're just offset each other, but going to a bigger tile. The mosaics, I would say, is not a trend that we're doing much anymore. So you've seen the glass and the stone kind of mosaics. It really, it's right there. So not as much anyway. And again, I'm going to trends. If you have these things and they're great and you love them, that's what's important. I'm just telling you what you see the most of right now. And the materials are still out there. All right, lighting. This is a huge number in a kitchen remodel. People are always shocked at what we are required to do right now for code. They've changed the code a lot of times lately, and my electric bill 10 years ago was probably, on the high end, $2,500 to do a kitchen. Now, most of my electric bills for a kitchen are right around $7,000. So there's a huge gap, and it is because of the new code. So it is required that every appliance, and again, this is why I said feel free to move your appliances around, are required to be on their own separate circuit all the way back to the main box. So if your box is in the garage and your kitchen's on the opposite end, somehow you got to get from there all the way across. And that's just that's a big one. So then each of the circuits are, they're called arc faults, and they pop at the drop of a hat. Another issue that we have, but that's our issue. So, you want to get a good electrician that knows what they're doing so that you're getting good quality products in there. Otherwise, everything's just going to keep popping. And that's just the way it's written. But my recommendation is always to layer. So start at the ceiling. Recessed lights, track lighting. There's new LED, I call them a disc, Some people call them different, but literally they are this thick, and on a ceiling they look like they are a recessed light. Most people would not really know the difference. The big benefits are, yes, ma'am.
What did you call it?
I call them a disc light. They're an LED light, but they look like a disc to me, so that's what I keep calling them. I don't know if there's a formal name or not, but here's the thing about it. If it's an insulated ceiling, just I'm giving you a cost so you can kind of compare what's worth spending the money on. If it's a nice insulated ceiling and we got to put a recessed light up into it, it has to be a insulated box recessed. So the product itself, just the recessed light, starts to range between $125 to $175 for material only. We haven't even gotten to getting it in there yet. So my rule of thumb, if I'm going to figure out a project, is I go $250 for each recessed light in an insulated space. It's just a rule of thumb so that I can keep things, bidding them. If I put one of those disc lights, all they require is a regular box like you have, just a normal everyday box. And so cost for material is 20 bucks. You can see where the differences lie. So there is a big savings. Recessed look great, I get it. The LEDs at some point will probably have to be replaced, but they should last for quite a while. So there's a huge gap there. But always think ceiling light. You can also do track lighting. If you just have the one single, the new track lights they put off a ton of light. I'll show you an example later of how different they are. Under cabinet lights, it's one of my biggest things that please do it, and if they don't want to do it, I almost want to pay for it myself to do it. It makes a huge difference. You can put them on a dimmer, and they're LED, they're low voltage. I mean, they just don't take a lot of energy. There is strip lights, which are like a piece of tape. A little bit trickier installation, and the product is a little more, but the light is a little bit different. So you really should, if you're really into the under cabinet lights, compare what your options are. Otherwise, certainly you can just do the regular, rectangle piece and put it in there. And put it on a dimmer, and you'll love it. It'll be worth every penny. So the under cabinet, and then there's pendant lights. So, and again, I've been doing this for quite a while. This, again, was probably, I'm thinking maybe 15 years ago, and I use it for an example. The peninsula or an island, and then we did these small little lights for years, but they just don't put off enough light. So the trend, if I had to pick a trend, is to actually go to bigger lights, a little bit chunkier. So for instance, on an island like that, I probably would switch from the 3 and either go to one big one at this point, or I would do 2 smaller ones that were more like that 12-inch range. The other thing is, these are set really high, which is great. The rule of thumb that if an electrician just walks in from the top of the countertop to the bottom of the light, their rule of thumb is about 32 inches. But the bigger the light gets, the higher you should go. So if they're little lights, the 32, 34 is great. But if they get bigger, get them up higher. So just for look.
Well, what about the lighting in other spaces of the kitchen, like over the table or whatever? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, so you're asking what kind of lighting over a table? If there truly is a dinette space, let's say, that's in the kitchen, yes, then go for it. The only thing is, if it's a small kitchen, you don't want too many hanging things. So if it's a small kitchen and you do have a designated dinette, I would put all the money into that one fixture, do the recessed or the disc or some other kind of lighting, and skip over an island. Because if it's a small kitchen, you're either going to have a small peninsula or a small island. Don't try to do both lighting. It gets to be too many things hanging. But, and again, here's a rule of thumb. If it's, let's say, a 48-inch table, you want to be somewhere in that like 30 to 32-inch wide, which is much bigger than we used to do. It used to be half. So if you had 48, you would do 24. They're getting bigger. Everything just gets bigger, right? Isn't that the way it goes? But yeah, and this is a spot that I say, again, when you're working out your whole budget, this is a spot to spend some money on, because this is not an easy one to fix later. You can change the fixtures, but digging into walls again isn't going to be easy. So I'm just going to hit on flooring real quick. So there's a ton of different floorings out there. So hardwood floor, still on-site, sanded on-site. Typically we're matching, maybe you have an 1.25 inch or inch and a half oak floor. we can run that right through the whole house. You'll never even know that there was a seam that we added onto it. That's still one of my favorites. And again, it's probably personal. But it doesn't always work for height or if you're doing leaving some kind of flooring intact, you've got to worry about that height. If the cabinets are staying, the toe kicks can really get screwed up. If you're bringing in more flooring, there's a lot of things that height of the new flooring can play in depending on what you're keeping. So these are laminates. And we just did this in a basement, and I happened to grab it out of my office. This installed, and because we did it in a basement, because it's obviously a little more humid, looks fantastic. We also did this in a kitchen in Maple Grove once. It was great. This is $6 a square foot installed, which is huge to me. Because if you do an on-site floor, my cost installed is about $13, fully sanded on-site. Now, you have the option to do a pre-finished floor. Here's my pluses and minuses. To a pre-finished wood floor has a little beveled edge on it. And that's how they get the two pieces to come together. This floor somebody bought it at Lumber Liquidators, and I said, yep, we'll lay it. It was a 100-year-old house plus, and it did not have that bevel. And that was solid Brazilian cherry, which is one of the hardest floors there is in this world. And we couldn't get them to line up because the floor was so uneven, and we had no play with that rounded edge. So literally, they had to shave down each piece of wood from the back side of it to try to get it smooth. I lost a lot of money on that floor, by the way. But cork is out there, so you got to kind of play to the heights. This is also a Pergo came out with one that looks like tile. It's just something different. It's not a wood on the floor, so don't disregard some of these other products that are out there. Luxury vinyl, it's skinny. It fits into when you don't have the space, the luxury vinyl is out there. It's not always, there's different levels, but it's not always the cheapest way to go. And I had one more floor that I was going to talk about. Oh, ceramic tile. Now that we have these heated floors that have somewhat become cost effective, if you're worried about a cold floor using ceramic tile, the heated floor is an option. Again, you got to worry about the height. But ceramic tile, so again, I'm going to go to the trends. You've seen at Home Depot the 12 by 24s. They're everywhere. That used to be a hard tile to find, that big of a tile. We just installed one that was 3 feet by 18 inches. Again, everything's getting bigger. So there's very little seams. It looks like one solid floor. We did the grout line small, and it looks great. So just know that they're out there, but you got to use the heat or the height. Okay, plumbing. I gotta be quick. We buy almost all of our plumbing fixtures on build.com. If you've been on any of those websites, it is owned by Ferguson, so if Ferguson has a showroom, you can certainly use it. But I almost buy everything on there versus buying through Ferguson. For whatever reason, if I ordered it from Ferguson, it would be 3 weeks. Again, I'm picking on them, sorry. If I go to build.com, I'll have it in 4 days. I don't know why, but that's how it works. So for sinks, stainless steel is your option. You certainly have Kohler, which has all the colors, but they're cast iron, and they're very heavy. If you're mounting them underneath a piece of granite, they're a heavy, heavy sink, and you need to support them from down below. So that can sometimes screw up your, what you've got going underneath your sink. We use a lot, this Blanco it's called. There's other different, it's called a composite of granite. They come in incredible colors. So you can get a colored sink, it's lightweight, it's solid all the way through, it cleans up beautifully. Each sink is probably about $4.50, so they're going to be more than a stainless, depending on the stainless. But for the first time, we can get color that isn't, a cast iron full-on sink, which the cast iron still can chip. So we use them a lot. We buy all those through build.com. Fixtures, again, there's a million different kinds. New code, though, I will give you a heads up, is requiring an air gap, it's called. So what they're trying to avoid is the dishwasher backing up into the lines. So when we run it, we have to run a separate, and it looks like a little round, kind of like a soap dispenser, but square, and it's got little vents in it. So if you're remodeling a kitchen, you are required to do that. So when you're ordering your granite, you got to think, I need another hole, first of all, figure out where you want to put it. And then you need to buy that air gap because it doesn't come with the faucets. And so you kind of want them to typically match. So that is a new code that we're not able to get around with. Now, if a homeowner after the fact wanted to take that out and disconnect the dishwasher from that and put in a soap dispenser, they certainly could. and I would never know anything about it. Hint, right? It's another one of those weird codes. Okay, I'm going to be really quick on the befores and after. So this was a before. It actually had a step down into the living room. We extended the floor. We took away from the family room to make the kitchen bigger. This is the one that had the soapstone. So all we did was extend the kitchen by taking some of it from the family room, which was a step down that was irrelevant anyway. This was a before, just a kitchen in St. Louis Park. We took down the door, or that wall between the dinette and the kitchen, and we were able to get it a lot bigger. Taking down walls makes a huge difference. And it was a bearing, so you can see where we did the archway. This was that super tiny kitchen, truly one of the smallest kitchens, but you can see that used to be a pantry. It was one of those pantry closets that I was kind of telling you that I find a lot in these houses. We turned it into the microwave storage, because we literally, that is the whole kitchen right there, and then that microwave. It was tiny. But I thought sliding it in, we just put electrical in there and went from there. This was in Minneapolis. It had a peninsula, really tight. We didn't add any more space. We just opened it up and got an island in there. If you're worried if you have enough space between an island and a cabinetry, here's the rules of thumb. 36 is your minimum, 42 is your ideal, and if it's a main walkway, I would try to get 48 if you can. But most of these kitchens somewhere are between 42 and 45 on a main walkway, because again, we got to work with what we got. Taking down walls, there's two different ones. We see this house, I'm from Maple Grove, and this house is in, there's so many of these in Maple Grove. But we just took down these walls. These are two different kitchens, but they're both the same scenario. The other big thing that if you can fit it into your kitchen, is a walk-in pantry. I did new construction for years, and we had the corner pantry with all these walls coming out. I'm sure you've seen it in friends' houses or whatever. Now we're using a lot less space for these walk-in pantries. We're just trying to get more storage, because I don't know if big appliances. I don't know if anybody's I just bought one of those pressure cookers. It was on like the TV shows where you call it, yeah, I need one of those. Bought one of those. It's this big, literally. And then I just bought one of those air fryers, trying to make my life healthier, right? Another big appliance. So we need storage. So those, if you can fit it in there, you don't need as much space as we used to have. The other thing is, although we built walls on this one, the newer ones I'm doing are actually based on cabinetry. They're going to the ceiling. It's like if you built a pantry, except for this one's a walk-in. It's got the two doors. You just walk in it. They're gorgeous. This is a before. This is a Minnetonka. So where the refrigerator and that pantry are right now, we made it into a desk area and painted it a different color. It's that far picture on that side. So you can change it up. And she went with that. That's Chelsea gray. Those are Cambria tops. That was, yep. Again, you can see the bigger fixtures set much higher. Here's a before. This was just taking down a wall. This is an older one. This is the one with the red stove. All we did was take down where this little seating area was, because we had some bearing points that we had to work around. But we got the stove out of the middle of where that island was before. Here's a before. Here was the problem, and I'm sure everybody has this. That's the door to the garage. That's the door to a half bath. That goes out to the deck. And the distance right there was only 7 feet, 10 inches. And they had a table there. It just didn't work, so we eliminated the table, put in a longer peninsula, opened up the end into that family room, and took some space from the family room to make the dining room. Here's a before. So we used all these existing cabinets. This is the one that I was going to show you about the track lighting. Like, don't be afraid to use track lighting. This is the only fixture. We had a budget. We were working with it. This is the existing cabinetry. That is the existing wall. We added, we have a great cabinet maker that can match like nobody's business. That's the same kitchen. So this is what you saw before. We added all of that. We added the peninsula. And we added the two lights there, but that's just track lighting that we switched out. And I mean, it went from dark to light. And it's all original cabinetry. This one's in Maple Grove. They had a dinette. Again, some of these dinettes are kind of small. So I sold real estate for a long time too. And if you have a dinette that's too small and it's not really usable, and you have a formal dining room, You can get rid of one as long as you keep some seating in that kitchen, whether it be a peninsula or a center island. But you need one designated dining room, as you need one tub in every. Some people want to take out the tubs. So that's the same kitchen. We just extended it and got seating for 6 all the way around. Here's a before. Took down the wall. This one you saw before. Our original plan was to make this longer. She had a little bistro table here she still wanted to utilize, so it's shorter, but yeah, I would have probably extended it. That's how it originally was. Here's the lady with all the utensils. The one that cracks me up is the whisk. Can you see that even? That's a big whisk. It just, can you imagine when you walk in? This is like what I do. I see some crazy stuff. That's the after. So where her kitchen sink was before became a prep sink, and everything in here are all her mixers, all of that built into those. They're like, they slide up, whatever. I can't think of the words. There's a garbage on this side, there's a garbage. This is that IKEA kitchen that I told you about. Her backsplash is actually black granite, etched out with chain put in it and poly put over the top of it. It was $250 a square foot. Here's just a basic before. Again, just this one had a big peninsula coming all the way around. There was one way in and one way out. So when you do that, you kind of limit how people utilize your kitchen. So we took it out and just went to an island and extended the kitchen out and came across. So we made the kitchen bigger and then were able to get an island in there. All right, I talked really fast at the end because I don't want anybody. So any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Question, if you were going to leave your countertops intact, would you still shop for your appliances before the new countertops?
So you're keeping the
Existing cabinets stay.
Yep.
Would you still do appliances first and then your countertops, or then do you do countertops and then your?
Yes, I would. Because if there is any variables, then you'll know.
Which would you do first?
So she asked if you keep the existing cabinetry, but you want to put in new countertops and appliances, would you pick your appliances first? Yes. I would, only because there could be some weird thing like the refrigerator's an extra inch. And if you put that countertop, maybe where it's existing, you could lose that inch. Or if you have to make an adjustment to a cabinet because of an appliance, that would be the time to do it. So appliances first, then tops. Yep, did I answer that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Did you say that every appliance needs a separate circuit?
Every appliance, down to the disposal. Yep, it's a pain, I get it. That's why it's so expensive. Yes, so it's gotten a little out of hand. And the problem is the appliances and these new arc circuits can't keep up with each other. They're flipping each other constantly. So, yeah.
If you have an older home, does that mean you'd have to bring your house up to that code to sell it then?
Well, no. If you did a remodel and you didn't, and it was significant enough that you didn't bring it up to code, they could question it, I guess. Because is it St. Louis Park and Bloomington do inspections before closing, right? Isn't that the two? I think those are the only two. Maybe Minneapolis, but it would be. But you aren't. If you were selling your house and you're keeping your kitchen intact, they aren't going to require you to get it to code. No. No. Just if you remodel it and don't do it. But for instance, in your case where you're only putting in countertops and you're changing out your appliances, you are not required to meet the new code. No. So, yeah, no, you're not. It depends. They consider it like an update or if you're truly remodeling. Do you have access to it? If you're getting new cabinets, they're going to consider you have access because you can dig in those walls. It's not as bad as it sounds. There's different scenarios. Like sometimes we'll have to do a sub panel. So all we need to do is run one wire to like a utility down below. Then we'll put all of the appliances in there and just we'll have direct wiring from there. And a lot of the panels just can't they aren't big enough to take some of these appliances, so we're having to do a sub panel anyway, so why not make it closer to where we need it to be? So, but certainly I'm here to answer any questions if anybody has any, but thank you so much, I appreciate it. Thanks for sitting all the way through it.